So for the audience, my name is Nic Cary, and I work with the team at blockchain.info. We're the world's most popular Bitcoin website, and we provide wallet services for people anywhere on the planet to send and receive Bitcoins. And probably the most interesting thing about blockchain is that we do not have custodial relationships with our users. So you are firmly in control of the funds at blockchain.info. So the way our technology works is it delivers a package of software through the browser, kind of like using Google Hangouts or Skype, and it allows people to peer-to-peer send transactions to and from each other. But no one at blockchain has access to your funds. No one can change anything or stop a transaction from happening. And right now, we've got about 1.75 million wallet users at blockchain.info. We do 100 million page views a month. And a couple other things that are sort of historic. Blockchain conducted the world's first merger and acquisition, 100% in Bitcoin. And we are probably the only company on the planet that does not have a corporate bank account that's 100% Bitcoin-based business. So today, I'm here to talk a little bit more about Bitcoin. I'm often asked, what is Bitcoin? And to people, I try and describe it in the following way, as simple as possible, which is Bitcoin is basically money for the internet. People use email every day and allows them to send messages to and from each other anywhere in the world instantly, basically for free. And that's the promise of Bitcoin too. So if you can understand the value proposition for email, then imagine that value proposition for people to freely be able to send money across borders in the digital age of the internet, and that's really what it's about. A little more fundamentally, Bitcoin is a payment network, just like Visa, Amex, or MasterCard, but it's also a currency like euros or yen, and in order to ride that payment network, you have to be in possession of Bitcoins. So there are a couple ways of getting Bitcoins today. You can go to an exchange like Bitstamp or ANX or Coinbase and buy your Bitcoins. You can also go to localbitcoins.com and trade them with people in your neighborhood. You could just start to accept Bitcoin for a service you provide, which is probably the best way. And we're excited to see new ways that people and entrepreneurs in the industry will find ways to get Bitcoin into the mass market. So I'm going to spend time today spending really a little bit of a review on some of the travels that I've had. So all the photography you'll see in this presentation was taken by myself and family members over the past year, and we've clocked well over 500,000 miles on most of the continents, going to meetups and going to conferences and speaking about Bitcoin and teaching people about its benefits. And I would state that in a lot of ways, the conversation that's so much more compelling to me is the one outside of the borders of what I would call the first world. It can sometimes take quite a while to explain why Bitcoin might be useful to the average college student or a professional in North America. You know, they have services, but I'll tell you that conversation is a lot faster in Argentina when you explain that there's a way for someone to send and receive money instantly, basically for free, and their government can't corrupt the monetary supply or put capital controls on their funds, and in 30 seconds they get it and they want to get signed up. So without further ado, I'm going to go through my quick presentation here and talk a little bit about some of the use cases and value propositions of Bitcoin from around the planet. So I'm going to move on here. Bitcoin is going to be able to disrupt a lot of different things, but one of the ones I'm kind of interested in are remittances. So remittances are payments that come across borders from usually family members that are working abroad, sending money back home so they can feed their children and take care of their loved ones. And it's a pretty big market. The World Bank estimates there are $581 billion that cross borders a year. Now, usually these are riding payment networks like Western Union or MoneyGram or something like that. And unfortunately, some of the poorest and hardest working people in the world are victims of extortionary systems. And the numbers are probably a lot higher because they can't track exactly how much money literally someone straps into a bag and crosses a border with. These are ones over official payment networks. Credit card transactions last year, which typically incur 2 to 3% fees for merchants, there were over $7.7 trillion in credit card transactions all over the world last year. And this is another place where Bitcoin can make a huge difference by removing those fees and increasing and basically making the payment systems more efficient. I was in New York a couple weeks ago presenting on this topic for TEDx, and I was in a cafe, and I went back to wash my hands, and there was a person that was actually bathing themselves in the bathroom. And then later in the afternoon, I was in Bryant Park, and there was a guy who was running around the fountain collecting coins from children that had just thrown in their pennies and quarters, making wishes. And I think sometimes we forget that even in our own backyard, we have some problems. And it's kind of an unknown fact, but 20.1% of Americans are underbanked, which means they're not receiving a full set of financial services, which is 1 in 5 households. And it's about 8% that are completely unbanked. So even in the world's most sophisticated financial economy with the best banking systems that the world's created to date, there are plenty of people that do not have access to some services. Globally, though, it's much more than that. This is a photo that was taken in Vietnam. And for me, when I think about the mission that blockchain's on and also the Bitcoin community, I mean, wouldn't it be neat if we lived in a world where the 2 parents of young Vietnamese children had access to a superior financial system than the Fortune 500 CEOs living in New York? Here's some more photos. It's kind of unknown, but another fact that's kind of interesting is that there are 2.5 billion people on planet Earth that do not have access to any financial services. These people have been completely neglected by the existing banking infrastructures. They're just ignored. Where someone with a smartphone could have access to a better financial system than Wall Street executives. So that number again is 2.5 billion people around the world have no access to financial services whatsoever. It's really quite astonishing. So I think when I look back over really interesting trends in the past 20 years, and I'm a millennial, so I've grown up in the age of the internet a bit, I look at some really disruptive technologies that have sort of redefined how we interface with what used to be tangible goods. And these technologies have become so pervasive that sometimes we kind of take them for granted. But I think it's relevant to spend a little time going down memory lane here. You know, I used to imagine a world where I didn't have to go to Walgreens and send them, you know, my piece of film and wait 5 days to get my photographs developed. But now with an iPhone or an Android, you know, I can instantly take pictures, broadcast them to the cloud. There's no waiting, and we've solved this problem. And now Kodak, which was $1 billion business, is basically dead. You know, I used to imagine a world where I could watch whatever movie I wanted, whenever I wanted, wherever I wanted. And before I had to go down the street to the corner and hope that the store was open and make a reservation, surrender all this private information, hope that the video I wanted was available. But now we've solved this problem, and you can digitally download your movies. So another multi-billion-dollar business is out. You know, and I used to imagine a world where if I forgot my mother's birthday, I didn't have to send a belated message to the postal system. Now I can get on that, instantly send a message wherever she is, and I'm not going to be in the doghouse. So whether it was movies or music or books or email, we've seen the digitization of goods, and I don't think it should be too big of a surprise that money would become digital too. We're talking about the financial future of the world, and it's really best that people not have their heads stuck in the sand on this topic. This photo was taken in the Saharan desert in Morocco back in September. So I want to tell some very kind of specific cases from the past year of my travels that sort of kind of provide a little perspective on what I've been witnessing around the world. So last fall, I went to visit my sister, who's in the Peace Corps in Morocco, and we decided to go on a trek riding camels into the Saharan desert. And so we're kind of cruising into the sunset, and we've got this Berber guide who's wearing this beautiful blue and gold embroidered jalaba, and the sun is kind of cruising across the horizon. There are these dung beetles that are kind of climbing up and down over the sand dunes, and it's just an absolutely stunning evening. And this guy was not watching the sun set. He was watching the moon rise over the horizon, which for Bitcoiners, everyone in the industry is always saying we're trying to get to the moon, so and we are. But I was watching him, and he had this really strong posture. I was so curious what was going through his mind. This man's primary source of income is selling polished geodes for a living. So he goes out into the desert, finds rocks, brings them home, polishes them up, and sells them to tourists. And the whole moment was completely shattered when this guy's iPhone 5 rings and he answers a phone call. And I hadn't seen a telephone pole, or I hadn't seen any electrical grids for a couple days, and it just blew my mind. I realized that even though he may not know it yet, this guy had access to as much information on his smartphone as the wisest people in the world did 10, 15 years ago. And now he can go to blockchain.info, set up a wallet, and immediately gain access to international markets, create frictionless payments, which is just going to unleash an unbelievable amount of human capital into the world. And I'm so excited about those kind of things. So that was one of the kind of more interesting stories for me, and a real epiphany from my year. You know, there's more photography here. I'm kind of excited to tell you a story about two women I met who are from Afghanistan, but they were born as refugees in Iran. And after the conflicts, they went home and decided to form an organization called the Women's Annex Foundation. And they're focused on digital literacy in Afghanistan. So they're setting up schools, teaching people how to type, learning about how to use smartphones. And they had all kinds of problems running the operations for that for their business, rather for their nonprofit, and that's because they first of all couldn't use any banks traditionally, and PayPal wouldn't touch them, and Western Union would charge up to 40% to send money into their volunteers, and they've converted their entire operation to Bitcoin. So these really impressive women are doing whatever it takes to improve their world, and Bitcoin is helping them do that. And this is something that could only happen in a Bitcoin world. So, you know, there's a lot of negative press on Bitcoin sometimes. People are focused on the price or speculation, problems with service providers. And I think that's kind of unfortunate, because what I'm seeing is a completely different story and in a totally different light. Let me tell you about this guy. So this is Francesco, and his wife's name is Francesca, and they're from Italy, but they recently moved to Bristol to pursue a dream that they've had. He was a flight attendant steward, and she was a hairdresser, and they don't have a computer. They also don't really understand too much about digital cryptocurrencies, but that doesn't matter. They understand that feeless payments are something that helps them in their bottom line. And so Francesco here is showing off his blockchain wallet, and also rather a blockchain merchant app, which is an app that anyone in the world can download right now. If you run a small coffee shop or a restaurant or something like it, you can start to accept Bitcoin completely free. The app is 100% open source. And we built this because everyone at Blockchain, all of our employees are paid in Bitcoin. So we're super passionate about making sure that we can go spend those Bitcoins in the neighborhoods we live in. So Francesco set up his blockchain merchant wallet, and he now accepts payments from people all over the world. And part of his strategy is to create a closed-loop Bitcoin economy. So he's actually working with his suppliers in Italy to accept Bitcoin for his high-margin products, so that he can save a few percentage points on all of those. And kind of a neat story. And there are more and more and more of these all over the world. I've met women in Paris that run a coffee shop. She's sending money back home to her family in China. People in Amsterdam sending money back home to Algeria. All of them using Bitcoin, who understand the value proposition. And it's so exciting to see these stories unfolding. So, more photography. Bitcoin has been declared as a technical tour de force by Bill Gates. There was a senior economist for the Federal Reserve, which said it's a remarkable conceptual and technical achievement. When people are talking about it this way, this is the reason why the banks are scared to death about it. And the reason is that Bitcoin just circumvents all of the legacy thinking over 50 years. It's a completely different approach. It's a trustless system. It lets people interface with each other with no counterparty risk. There's no central authority. There's no payment network. There's no bank that's kind of interfering or taking fees that are extortionary. There are tiny fees on the Bitcoin network, and it basically, those pay out to the volunteers that help secure the transactions that are happening all over the world. So the good news is that this space is heating up, and it's moving at light speed. 1 year ago today, there were maybe 5,000 or 6,000 merchants in the entire world that accepted Bitcoin. And now there are probably 50 or 60,000, maybe even 100,000. 1 year ago today, blockchain had about 250,000 users on our wallet. Now we have 1.7 million. And 1 year ago, the market capitalization of Bitcoin was maybe $1 billion, and now it's at 7 or 8. So it's rivaling that of nation states in terms of its market cap. So we're very early on in this industry still. There's so much work in front of us and so much ahead of us. The software that people interface with has to get better, and a lot of smart companies and teams are working on that. And I'm proud to say that blockchain will be releasing updates to all of our core wallet services this summer. So you'll be able to see a new Android wallet, a new web wallet, and we're right now working to get final approval with Apple to resubmit our iOS app, which is very exciting. So lots of things going on. And just sort of in conclusion, when I think about the world, I used to imagine a world where anyone, anywhere could instantly send value to and from each other basically for free. And with Bitcoin, you can be your own bank basically. And this is going to change how everything happens in the future, and it's so exciting. So anyway, that's my quick overview and presentation of some stories that are sort of from the past year in my travels, but also ones that have been told to me by other people, and I'm always an ear for finding the compelling human stories, because I think for me, Bitcoin gets wrapped up in a lot of technical things, and it should be, because it's a really impressive innovation, but it also requires us to find use cases that would never otherwise have been possible, and Bitcoin is doing that. And so who knows where we'll be 1 year from now, but hopefully we can check in again and say that there are now millions of merchants accepting Bitcoin all over the planet, and tens of millions of people are using Bitcoin to and from to send money to and from each other, and to interface with new markets and find new customers and take care of their families. And we're going to see really impressive innovations this year. So if you're an entrepreneur or you're listening to this and thinking, man, how can I get involved? Build software, build a solution that helps people secure their Bitcoins, or provide some sort of application that makes it easy for them to have fun with. I think people in games are going to have a lot of opportunities here. I think specific wallet solutions for markets. Build a wallet for women, build a wallet for parents that want to pay out tuition to their kids, or I don't know, there's so many ideas. I could probably come up with a million of them, but I don't have time to work on all of them. So we need info, check out our APIs, they're completely free. We can help support you if you're getting going. And anyway, I hope this was helpful, and I'm more than happy to facilitate a little bit of Q&A going to answer any questions that are still out there.
Absolutely awesome. Thank you for that fantastic presentation, and beautiful pictures, by the way. That is, my wife's a photographer too, and I've got to show her this presentation. She'd love that. So, so yeah, that, just, where do we start? This is just incredible things that, I want the listeners and the viewers to be able to understand and appreciate how much, how critical blockchain.info and the people behind it and people like yourself are to helping develop this economy, because it really